Thank you, Dan and Pete. Another amazing podcast. It's episode 206 of the Goa podcast. And if you missed it tonight, or you're just tuning in and you missed out on the Goa Weekly Show, it is available wherever you can get good podcasts to listen. It gets released on Friday morning. So yeah, and it was great fun at the Nexus Toy Fair over the weekend, and I did like all the good little bits and pieces that all the little artists had there. And I just wanted to show off one thing, because there was a lady there, I say lady, young woman we'll say, doing some amazing crossover art, and I picked this up. It tickled my fancy with the good old Wild Thornberrys and the Rocky Horror Picture Show mashup there. So that's by a local artist called Alana Williamson. So definitely, if you like that sort of stuff, they had one where Chucky from the Rugrats was the Chucky doll as well. So that was really cool. Really love that. So now, let's get back into it. Episode 7 tonight of Nuts and Bolts. Welcome. Thank you everybody for joining in. Big week last week in the ANZPL. It was great to see. After 6 consecutive games of draws, we ended up with 2 wins on Friday night. So let's just jump straight into it, shall we? Let's have a look at game 1. So game 1, we had Action X and the Bulldogs. So this was going to be quite an exciting game, I thought. Bulldogs has kind of underperformed a little bit, but an Action X sitting on top of the ladder. So this was going to have some good notes to it. And geez, did we see it. First up, Bulldogs come on with the south push, and Speed did his best there. Speed from Action X to hold off a whole heap of tanks you can see there, but eventually it was never going to work out for him. They managed to push through, and on that, Bulldogs pushed out to a 4-2 tank advantage, but the Action X managed to hold on to the HP advantage, so they bled out the Bulldogs a fair bit. Action X did bring it back to 2v2, but ended up on a tank elimination win to the Bulldogs. So in this one as well, the next game on Sand River, you see Ravi got spotted out quite early and got chased down by 2 Action X tanks. I'm not sure if this was sort of a plan, but Bulldogs reacted very well. They adjusted their gameplay. What should have been certain death to Ravi there turns around into, first of all, an even trade, but it just put a heap of Action X tanks right in the way of a Bulldogs crossfire, and no surprise there, because Action X just bled out a whole heap of HP. Bulldogs managed to win on this map on attack as well. So this Sand River was the choice for Action X, so they've taken both attack and defense on opponent's map choice. So that was a big thing and a huge advantage heading into round 3 and 4. So with Action X on defensive cliff, Action X bled out a lot fairly early on, but they did manage to bring it back and got into this sort of Ringer Rosie situation here. So CJ and I think it was Kane against sold out to Darchi, and for Action X they didn't really need to do much because they were on defense. All they had to do was make sure that they didn't die and they would have won the time, but as you can see, 4 minutes, that's a long time to do that. So they eventually ended up drawing out sold out to Darchi and getting the win for that round. Round 4. So Dark did take a lot of damage early on, but Bulldogs set up really well. They got Madhouse got some pretty good vision down the line. Even though Action X took the cliff, the Bulldogs just managed to set up superbly well. And leading into the mid game, they had quite a significant HP advantage. But eventually, because Action X were on attack, they had to make a move. Not the best move they could make. They forced a brawl, and just eventually the Bulldogs bled them down, resulting in a 3-1 win to Bulldogs. So that was good. So the Bulldogs were equal 7th leading into this, and Action X being first. That was quite an amazing run there that they had. That was so cool to see. Getting a win. No longer let's 2-2. And Game 2 was Archers versus Matildas. So starting off on Muravanka with Archers on defense. Saxon did try for some early cap pressure from the Matildas and did sort of go their way, but unfortunately they got a reset on and just ended up with a bit of a brawl. But it was going Matildas' way. Matildas had a lot of attack, but Archers realised this and they've stationed one tank far away. So by the time it came for Matildas to try and hunt them down, because they realised even on a 3-tank capture they're not going to have the time to do it, it was too far away, so Archers won that one with a timed defence win there. So round 2, Matildas on defence of Muravanka. Archers did get in quick, but Matildas get on early kill, which then Matildas were able to set up defensively and block the Archers quite effectively. The Archers did try to move in for a 3-tank cap, as you can see here, but with the positioning of the Matildas tanks, they had no chance. There was reset shots going anywhere and everywhere, and eventually the Matildas drew the Archers down and got a win on a defence there. On to Ghost Town next. So Archers did bring a HP advantage just straight into the round just based on the tanks that they chose, but they bled out a lot of that early, negating that lead. So Matildas chose their battles well. They had a 3-on-1 and a 2-on-1 that resulted in 2 kills with no deaths. So they ended up with a 3v5 tank advantage there. And Whippet himself managed to draw out a couple of tanks in the closing stages and get them into a crossfire, which then led to the Matildas winning on a tank elimination. So draw secured for Matildas. Heading on to Matildas on defence on Ghost Town here. You can see the Archers tried to roll onto 2 flag with a 2-tank capture, but Matildas just rolled in with numbers, a lot of focus fire, and they came away with a 4-2 advantage, which really blunted any attack that the Archers had. And after that, when you've only got 2 tanks versus 4 tanks, and even now you can see on the screen there was 1 tank left with significant HP there. There was no chance for the Archers to get back into it. So Matildas with the second win of the round, 3-1 against the Archers. So 2 games down and we're already up 2 wins. So that's much better than last week where we saw 4 draws in a row. So let's see what happened in this game. Conquerors versus Panthers. Goober did a big scouting run here, and Panthers did try to move on to take a 2-tank capture. They were set up for a bit of a brawl, but Conquerors were as well when they just bled out the Panthers for quite a bit. And then by the time it came to... the Panthers did take a lot of kills, but by the time it came to take on the last one, the last camo was just too far away and they couldn't get it. So round 2, Panthers on defense. There was once again Slayer moves on cap, and Conqueror set up very well to defend. Panthers had the HT advantage but a tank disadvantage in the later game, but managed to hold out and get the timed defense win there. So that's 1 each for the Panthers and Conquerors there. So we're heading towards a let's 2-2 draw, but let's see how it plays out. Round 3 with the Conquerors on defense at Muravanka. It was pretty quiet early game, lots of positioning, lots of jockeying for position, not just over that hill that's in the middle up here, you can see. Hang on, point my finger the right way, that way, somewhere up there. But eventually the Panthers were dealing some good damage, and the Conquerors did move on to a capture of 1 flag, but they kept getting resets, and at that point there was some point there they would have had to have committed to a battle, which I think would have been better for them, but they just stayed on the capture point and ended up getting I'm not quite sure. Oh, sorry, they're on the defense. I'm getting ahead of myself. That's the next game. But eventually Conquerors took a 2v1 tank advantage into the last fight, and they ended up taking that match, so securing the draw for themselves with a 2-1 lead going into the last match. So Conquerors did push for a 4-tank capture, but the Panthers did fall back a bit, but then they regrouped. JS managed to get a reset fairly early on, and they bled out. Conquerors bled out a lot, but they persisted with the tank capture, and at some point I think they should have realised that wasn't working for them and just taken an attack, but good for the Panthers at least, because it means that they ended up getting a win on tank elimination there. Oop, let me just reset my headphones a bit. On to game 4. Now this one was the pick for my match of the round here. Sentinels versus Scorpions, a Sydney derby. So Sydney on defence of Muravanka. So after a long time of not showing up at all, Muravanka has come out a few times now. So Rainbow got spotted out quite early, and there were some quite punishing moves on him, and he ended up going down. So the Sentinels had to play with a 4v5 tank disadvantage there. The Sentinels did manage to pull it back even with tanks and HP advantage, but the Scorpion made some moves and eliminated the tanks, and so the Scorpions got a win on an attack. Next round, Scorpions on defense at Muravanka. Zanin did draw out 2 Scorpions, and they got a 1-for-1 trade. But eventually we ended up in this situation where it was a 2-on-3, right, with the Scorpions on defense. Really, I'm not quite sure. Russian got very aggressive here, and I think he should have stayed back a bit more. In the end, he just was too far out, and he could have just stayed back a bit, taken some pot shots at the people on capture, and been able to sort that out. But in the end, the Sentinels get the win on attack there. So round 3 on Ghost Town was Sentinels on defense. Same. Similar to round 1, Rainbow bled out fairly early, and Scorpions took an early 4-5 tank advantage. Honestly, though, it was an amazingly clean fight. It was sort of a blink and you miss it moment, because the Scorpions just ran through the middle of the Sentinels. It was quite cool to watch that. So they won that, taking a 2-1 advantage there. So in round 4, there was some early trade damages between Cindy and JT. But eventually the Sentinels moved on to a 3-tank cap setup. Scorpions responded well, but eventually got aggressive. But Sentinels took advantage of that and eventually managed to take the win on capture there. So that was the end of that game. Sentinels versus Scorpions ends up in a 2-all draw. Moving on to the ladder. So this week we see some movement with Brisbane and Matildas getting their wins. They've jumped quite up on the ladder. So you got to remember, Brisbane Bulldogs were equal 7th. They've gone from equal last place up into equal 3rd place. So that's how close this competition is. But with only 3 rounds left to go, it's got to get to a point now where teams have to make their moves. It's getting to the pointy end. Action X, you think, is still going to be there playing finals. Matildas, if you remember, we did an interview a couple of weeks ago with CJ and JT. CJ from Adelaide Action X and JT from the Scorpions. And CJ was actually tipping Matildas to be up there. So it seems that what he's saying is coming true there. So now we've got an outright first and an outright second with a very close behind pack on 6 points there. So look, all it's going to take is one draw or a loss from Adelaide Action X and a win from one of those guys and one of those teams in the pack. So the Bulldogs, the Conquerors and the Sentinels, and all of a sudden the race for the top 2 really heats up. And even to the point where, like, it's probably really not going to be expected that it happens, but even the Perth Panthers, if the Panthers pull out a win, they're suddenly on 7 points. And that gets them in the running there as well. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how everything goes for the next 3 rounds leading up into the finals, and of course that grand final at Fortress Melbourne. Yes, you heard right, a live action final in Fortress Melbourne. That's going to be amazing. So before we move on to that, I'm just going to have a quick chat about the ANZBL. So for those that don't know, the ANZBL kicked off not Monday just gone, but the Monday before, and this is the B League just below the ANZPL, featuring the Wellington Wolverines, Hawthorn Hellcats, Canberra Centurions and Cairns Comets. So last week the Wolverines had a 4-0 win So I thought they were going to be a pretty good team to watch. But this week turns around. Wolverines lost to Hawthorn Hellcats 3-1, so that was a good one. And Centurions come up with a draw against the Comets. So with the ladder there, we've got Hellcats sitting up first with 1 win and a draw. Wolverines second with a win and a loss. Comets third with 2 draws. And Centurions last with a draw and a loss. So that competition's into its second of 6 rounds. So tune in Monday nights, twitch.tv/World of Tanks ANZ on Monday nights, as well as the ANZPL on Friday nights on twitch.tv/World of Tanks ANZPL. So back to the ANZPL, my play of the round. So this one here, this is a potential disaster. This came from the Action X and Bulldogs game. Early on, Ravi getting spotted out and Action X chasing him down. So he gets bled out a lot, and you think this is over for Ravi, a disastrous start. But in this little trench here, all of a sudden, Bulldogs manage to converge. Like, who's that? Is that Madhouse comes in, seals off the back, and you've got a tank up the front too, and someone on the ridge. All there, they've trapped these tanks, and this just sort of seemed to me like a great play, and it was the beginning of the end for this round. Like this whole play here set Bulldogs up to take round 2 of the first game, and it just and let them get the win for on the opponent's map. 2 wins on the opponent's map choice. So that is my pick for play of the round this week. Coming up this Friday night at 6 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/World of Tanks ANZ. First up, Brisbane Bulldogs and Matildas. So this game is going to be very interesting. So I'm very curious to see how that one plays out. That's Bulldogs and Matildas both coming off a win. That's going to be impressive to see there. Next, we have the Adelaide Action X and South Sydney Scorpions at 7 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time. Action X coming off a loss. They'll be looking to bounce back. I know right now I was talking to Speed in Twitter before this all kicked off, and they were going into scrims tonight, getting a bit of practice in, so I think they're going to be trying hard to make up for that loss last week. Then we have the New Zealand Derby, Auckland Archers versus Christchurch Conquerors at 8 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time, followed by the last round of the match at 9 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time, North Sydney Sentinels versus Perth Panthers. I really did, coming as a Perth supporter, because Perth boy here, got to go for the local team. I really would want to see Perth Panthers finish strong, get at least a win. If they can do it against the Sentinels, even more the better. Sentinels seem to be a bit off, especially after how well they did last season, going on to becoming the premiers in the end. But the way they played and the way that compared to where they're playing in season 2, it's a little bit inconsistent. So fingers crossed that Panthers might be able to take advantage of that. See if they can get one of those quick 3 tank captures that Sentinels lost to 2 weeks in a row. But yeah, so my pick for match of the round this week is actually going to be the first game, the Brisbane Bulldogs versus Matildas. So Brisbane Bulldogs looked impressive in their win over Adelaide Action X, and Matildas being able to pull it back against the Archers as well. So you probably think that Matildas had a bit of an easier game against the Archers, but both pulling out wins. So I think that's going to be a game to watch next week. So that's live on Friday night, twitch.tv/World of Tanks ANZ, starting at 6 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time. That's 4 o'clock Perth time or 7 o'clock in New Zealand time. Get amongst it. Sit down, 4 hours of entertainment that you got there. It's great for everybody. Lastly, let's have a look. How did your fantasy team go this week? I'm sitting pretty at the moment because out of all of last week, my fantasy team came third. Third out of 160 odd competitive. I was pretty damn impressed with that. Out of these teams, players, that made the Fantasy League Team of the Week, out of the top 7, I had 3 of these guys in my team, and 2 of them scoring over 300 points. So that was a big help to me. Possible 1,507.7 points. I came away with 1,255.9 spots. And I ended up, I'm in the top 20. Don't ask me how it's happened. Ended up in the top 20 in the Fantasy League standings overall. So still time to get amongst it as well. Join the ANZPL Fantasy League and just have some fun with it. Learn the play. That's one of the things that's been great for me. Let me learn a lot of the players. So definitely jump in, have a look, and see how you go with that. Lastly, as we do, we finish with tonight's tank fact. So, did you know, this is not so much a tank fact and more a World of Tanks fact. Did you know that World of Tanks has its own comic? World of Tanks roll out, published by Dark Horse Comics in August 2016. Written by Garth Ennis, who has written on titles such as Preacher, War Stories, and The Punisher. Illustrated by Carlos, and I'm going to butcher this surname, so I apologise in advance, Carlos Esquera, who has drawn for Judge Dredd, Strontium Dog, and War Stories Volume 2. It followed a young crew of British tankers post D-Day Normandy as they evade Germans and try to survive. So that was pretty, like, World of Tanks, I love how they get all these different promotional gigs going. Like, we spoke on, it was either the first or second week, about there was a strongman competition in Melbourne, and they ran a tank pool competition where an Australian won the world record, or broke the world record for fastest time for pulling a tank. So that's really cool. And that one, so the World of Tanks had its own comic. Oh, excuse me for a second. I was trying to get through it, but it didn't happen. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is this week's Tank Fact. Thank you so much for joining me again tonight over here on twitch.tv/GameOnOz. Don't forget to tune in to twitch.tv/World of Tanks ANZ on Friday night for round 6. Yeah, round 6 of the ANZPL. Only 3 rounds to go before the finals kick off. And we get to that magical moment on the 22nd of May at Fortress Melbourne. Oh, it's going to be brilliant. Hope you can be there. We'll see you on Friday night.